Hi, all you wonderful Authors Love Readers listeners. Before we get into this week's show, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I am asking for Patreon donations. Let me tell you, it's really hard for me to ask. As my friends would tell you, I'm not good at asking for help at all. The reason that I set up the Patreon for the Authors Love Readers podcast, it is not for me as an individual author. It's strictly for the podcast. I would love for the podcast to become self-supporting because I've been supporting it to this point. The expenses include having the podcasts edited, because you'll be surprised to know we talk longer than you actually listen. And I have a monthly fee for hosting the files because these are big files. And what I would love is to have people donate, a couple dollars a month would be terrific. $2 a month would be 50 cents an episode. It would be a sign of support and it would help defray some of these costs. So that would be the way I could keep the podcast going on. And I hope you'll consider that. Thank you. Hi, welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
I'm Chris Keniston, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to another edition of Authors Love Readers podcast. Today we have Chris Keniston. And I often tell people, Chris, how we've met and how we know each other. I think it's through Novelist Inc., isn't it?
That is the first time we did run into each other. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that is a common thread here. People hear a lot about Novelist Inc. And so tell us a little bit about what you write.
Well, I write mostly contemporary romance. Think along the lines of Hallmark movies. That would be what I write. Sappy, happily ever afters with just kind of a cross with MGM musicals and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. You just...
So you have some dancing and singing too, huh?
I do. I find that, in my mind, dancing seems to be like one of the most romantic things under the sun. So I do oddly find strange ways to get people dancing, even if it's in the kitchen.
Well, I am a longtime fan of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and I will totally agree with you that the dancing is...
Yeah, that's what I want.
Romantic.
I just want to be taken away from reality and have a nice read. And so that's basically what I do now. In the old days, I wrote women's fiction, but now that's what I write.
Oh, well, that's interesting because a lot of people tend to go the other direction from romances toward women's fiction, and you've gone from women's fiction toward romances.
Well,
do you find that you have a different approach when you're writing them? Do the lighter-hearted ones, do they take you away from reality when you're writing them, or is reality still there?
No, they actually both take me away from reality. The difference is that women's fictions are much longer books and much more complex books, and they take a great deal of time and thought. And in today's world where everybody wants to read books very quickly, I just can't do that. I can't take, 6 months to a year to write a book. So I've had to, and I actually didn't do it on purpose. It happened by accident. I wrote a book that my then publisher asked me for, and it was more romance than women's fiction, and it did so well. I was told, you're writing romance now.
So do you ever find that you have story ideas that would not necessarily fit in the romance that might, and not necessarily
Not
even the women's
exact-
fiction, but
sort of, but not exactly. I'm a pantser, so I sit down and start typing with very often nothing more than a title of a book or the names of the lead characters and possibly their jobs. So
okay,
I don't.
I envy you that. I often start with a title might be one of the last things. I will start writing with he and she, I don't always have the character names.
Yes, that's about where I am because I don't remember
Yeah.
them either. But I did write one book that I've always thought would be a tremendous start to a sort of cozy romantic mystery series, kind of a cross between the Golden Girls and Miami Vice. I
That's an
wrote
interesting cross.
I wrote a book about a former Navy SEAL. It was a prequel for a character in my original Aloha series that everybody wanted to know his story. I had married him off in the beginning of the book, so I figured I'd never have to do that. Well, they wanted it, so I had to come up with it. And his love interest, the heroine, had a grandmother who was a retired grifter.
Oh.
Yes, and it turns out Nana stole the show. Everybody loved her in that book, and she had lots of retired relatives and, fell in love with a retired cop, and I was like, and they live in Florida, and I thought this would make a hilarious cozy mystery series with just a smidge of romance in the background. But I've never gotten around to it, but someday that is on my list of I would like to write that story. I'd like to write that series.
Well, tell us the title of the book where Nana appears.
Oh, Nana appears in Shell Game. It is very much a standalone in the Aloha series, and it is all out a romantic comedy. There is absolutely nothing. It is romantic comedy. It would make a hilarious movie.
Where in the book do you do the research? Are you doing research all beforehand?
No,
or
I can't. I'm a pantser. I have no idea what I'm writing.
Good.
So I'm writing along and something happens and I'm like, I'm just writing a scene and I have to get my hero and my heroine, or at least two people in the book, to move cattle that have gotten out. And I'm like, okay, I have to actually write this scene. So I Googled moving cattle on horseback. And I spent 2 hours last night watching videos and taking word clips so I can have them say the right thing as one goes left and one goes right. And then I send it off to my ranch owner to say, did I get it right? And she says, you got it right. You done good. And I said, oh, cool.
Yeah, it's always terrific to have. I have a good friend. I write a lot of things set in Wyoming, and I have a good friend who I met on a trip out there who is part of a family ranch. And I dedicated one book to him, and it said, to Bill, who, after he stopped laughing, answered all my questions. Okay, let's go back. We're going to go backwards to some quick, quirky questions. All those cues to let the listeners get to know you. So I'm just going to start with, do you have any strong fears? And do you use those in books?
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I'm one of those people who, you give me a challenge and I'll take it.
Then
short of jumping out of an airplane.
Then do you have characters who have fears?
No, not usually, unless there's something going on like I did write one story where she was afraid of horses, but I just needed it because it created the perfect conflict for living on a ranch next to a guy who raises horses.
Okay. All right. How about your early childhood books? Can you identify a book or some books that really got you hooked into story?
Are you trying to tell me that everybody did not learn to read on Nancy Drew?
A lot of us read Nancy Drew. That's true.
Of course, that's the first books that I remember, and I would sit there. I even remember closing a Nancy Drew book and once trying to write my own mystery. I had to be 10 years old, or maybe 11, I don't know. And I wrote the first few paragraphs, and there was a scene where there was something in the kitchen, and and I described it as a combination of a stove and a this and a that, and what the heck was that all about? And I remember thinking, I'll have to figure out later what that is. Of course, never finished the story, never went back to it, and now all these years later, turns out I'm still a crazy ass pantser who doesn't know what things are when she puts them on the paper and has to figure it out later.
Have you, I'm skipping back to writing, but have you felt or have you experimented with trying to be um, a plotter, or have you felt pressure to
Oh,
be a
yes, it's
plotter?
horribly boring.
I think so too.
Horribly boring. I don't have enough of imagination. I will plot out. I did that. I wrote a book, and the first half was completely pantsed, and so we plotted out the second half, and my friends read it and said, "Oh, for God's sakes, please don't do that again."
Hmm.
It's very, very, very ugh. It's just,
Yeah,
there's
it's
nothing interesting, no twists, no nothing. It's horribly predictable.
just the way different brains work, I guess. But have you? So why did you try to outline it?
Um, just to create balance, speed. I lose a tremendous amount of time looking at a page thinking, okay, what are we going to have them do now? Well, let's start in the kitchen. And I have an author friend who just makes fun of me because we were on a cruise together, and I had to write a scene, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Oh, it's been a while since they've had Sunday supper. Let's do that. And she just cracked up laughing. She was like, I'd blow somebody up, and you're having Sunday supper. But I lose an awful lot of time that way. It would be wonderful if I just had an outline of a scene that does this and a scene that does that, and
Well,
then I
see,
could
my
change.
theory is that you have to put the time in one place or the other. Outliners put it in up front, and
Mm,
then they tend to not count that as writing time.
yeah.
And we pantsers do it in the midst
Yeah,
of
yeah,
what we're
that's
writing.
exactly right. There are a handful, there are a few handful, I'm guessing Nora Roberts is probably one of them, who the stories, they clearly must spew out of their ears as they're making breakfast in the morning, because they don't seem to need a whole lot of time to plot or pants. They just spit them out, but I'm not one of those.
Okay, we're going back to the getting to know you. What's your favorite color?
Green.
And do you know why? Has it always been that color, or have you
It's
changed?
always been green, and it's because when I was a little girl, everybody always people would ask them. I was probably in kindergarten or first grade. What's your favorite color? And most of the girls said pink, which I thought was too much like Pepto Bismol, and a lot of the other girls all said red. And I thought, well, everybody picks red, but red and green are opposite colors for Christmas, and I think green's pretty, so I picked green as my favorite color, and it has been my favorite color ever since.
Is there a particular shade, or do you like multiple shades of it?
I'm more in the darker greens, like the grassy shade of greens, the shamrock shade of green. I actually have my front hallway painted a very dark green.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How about a favorite taste?
Not one that comes to mind. I mean, I have some favorite foods, but nothing
Okay.
that would be like, oh, I absolutely have to have that.
So you're
No.
not a chocoholic?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, I'm allergic to chocolate.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
torn between thinking that's a tragedy and thinking, well, that leaves more for the rest of us.
Actually, it works out really well. My girlfriend, when I go out with my girlfriends, they get the huge chocolate desserts, and I'll pick something that's kind of creamy. I'll get the creme brulee or the butter pecan ice cream or something.
Have you had surprising jobs?
Well, it's a matter of opinion who considers it surprising, but I have to admit, a few people have been a little startled to discover that I was once upon a time a security guard at a nuclear power plant.
Oh. Now are they surprised because the power plant didn't blow up, or are they?
I think they were surprised because the first defense between me and invaders was me. Between them and the invaders was me.
Okay, that time of your life, Chris, thinking back to college and stuff, or earlier, were were there any songs that meant a lot to you at that time?
I don't know that they mean a lot to me at the time, but there are certainly songs that take me back to
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not exactly. My husband loves to have music on all the time. I don't necessarily need to have music on. I'm the kind of person, though, if you turn music, if I'm walking down the grocery aisle and, Journey starts playing Don't Stop Believing, my shopping cart starts moving down at a different beat than it was 3 minutes before. And if my daughter's anywhere near me, she'll go, Mother. Um, so, uh, I do, it's, music can take me back, but I don't necessarily remember a specific song that meant a great deal to me at the time.
Okay. Okay. One of the things that most writers do is they have certain bad habit words or phrases or structures. Do you find that you have those that recur? And
I find that they are different in every book.
oh,
You
that's
make an
harder.
effort to avoid you make an effort to avoid a crutch word that you wind up using a lot in one book, and then in the next book you haven't used it, but now you've used something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I can't remember an instance for myself, but I remember it happened. An author friend of mine, she had everybody leaning on the table here, the table there. I said, "There's tables all over the place. Can you get rid of some of these tables?" And she did. And the next book, they were all leaning against walls, and I'm like, "Okay, we got rid of the table, not a single table, but now we got them on walls." And I've been known to do the same exact thing. It's like, okay, do you realize you have used the same exact word 5 times in the last page? And I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay."
Hey, it really fit. Let's go back to I don't want to go away from the getting to know you questions without asking you about what you will take with you to my very strange little desert island that allows you to play movies, but only 3 movies. So, and you're going to be there a
Okay.
long
Well,
time. So, which 3 movies?
that's that. See, I'm not a rule follower, so I would probably take Apollo 13,
Okay.
My Cousin Vinny, and then I'd bring all the DVDs for the series Jag.
Well, you are not the first writer to cheat on this. I will tell you. Now, okay, I want to,
You know,
let's see. I want to go back. Now, Apollo
uh,
13 fascinates me because,
it's a
oh,
happy
but
ending,
everybody knows what the ending is and everybody knows how it came out.
but it
And
doesn't
yet,
matter.
that movie makes you worried. Eh,
It has its dramatic moments, and if I can't tell you how many times I have thrown into a book. I really am terribly unoriginal according to this little interview because, in my book, I have frequently said, "Houston, we have a problem." It's very, what's gonna happen, but it's gripping along the way, it's well acted, and it has your happy
yes.
ending. Yes, I want my happy endings. One of those, one of the movies that I always surprise people that I despise, practically, close to, almost, sort of, maybe, is Sleepless in Seattle,
It's,
because it's missing that one. It needed one closing scene that would have cost them so little to film for just a few minutes, because it does not have a happy
you know what
ending.
I think is it's all backstory. The story actually starts when the movie ends.
Okay, now I'm not sure I'm talking about the same movie, but okay. My thought is that on that particular movie, where it starts, where she's getting out of the taxi with the fiance nobody liked or she didn't
Yeah.
have or whatever, and she's got the mom's big old house with all the Christmas lights on it. At the end of Sleepless in Seattle, you have these 2 people who get on an elevator with a little boy, and everybody likes to think they lived happily ever after. For all I know, they got to the bottom of the street and she went left and he went right, and that was the end of it. I wanted that one last scene where she and Tom Hanks and the kid are getting out of the cab at Christmas time in front of her parents' house, mimicking the
Oh,
original.
well,
I don't have to see
yeah.
anything else. I don't have to know a damn thing, but now I know they're happy ever after.
I thought it was boring. Uh,
Oh, yeah, I thought that part too, but I didn't really hate it till I got to the end.
hmm.
Kind of like La La Land. Never saw it. Everybody that I talked to hated it because it didn't have the happy ending.
I have not seen La La Land. Yeah.
I've been told don't.
Okay. I won't. And
There you
okay,
go.
my cousin Vinny, it's pretty funny. Why Jag?
Yes. Oh, good heavens. Here's the deal. I dare you. Find season 1 where David James Elliott, who was stunning in his youth, gets off a helicopter in naval dress whites wearing those Ray-Ban shades and looks to the wind as a plane is landing, and tell me you don't want to watch everything that man ever does.
Okay. So
It's actually a pretty good. The first 4 to 5 seasons are really very good. It's a mix of drama and comedy and emotions, and it's one of the key things I'm truly hooked on, which is why a lot of readers like my books, is I'm real big on loyalty and
mm,
fraternity. The Marine Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, never leave a man behind. I do that in families. I do that in friends. I'm very big on you've always got somebody who's got your back, and that TV show had that through most of the seasons.
okay. I want to get to a question that a reader asks, and we've touched on this a little bit, but I'd like you to expand on it. Because she asks, where do our stories come from? And I particularly love that she says our beautiful stories. And she said, I
Aw.
know one author who dreams her stories, another has a character suddenly taking up residence in her head. So, talk a little more about how your stories start, where the ideas come from and
I wish I could say to her that I had a great source of ideas, but I really don't. They literally just it's like the characters are on the page and they're talking to me as I go. For instance, I wrote a book called Champagne Sisterhood. That was back in the romantic women's fiction days. One of a very popular, well-loved book. But when I started it, I had one thing in mind, which was kind of uh, three. I read a book where a an author had very close friends in high school and college, growing up, high school, college, and then they stopped seeing each other for 20 years and got together during a tragedy. And I thought that is just malarkey. People who are that close for that long stay in touch. They don't lose touch. So I thought, well, how would these people react in a supposed tragedy? And so I wanted to show a friendship that had never died, where they had never left they had always been there for each other. And the book starts out, and all I knew was the three friends and where they were from and their background, and I didn't know a whole lot more than that. And I gave her a job in New York City, and I said, I need to find a way for her to find out something's happened to one of her friends. What am I going to do? Oh, I know. The friend's husband has to have a best friend who has to know to call her, because the cops sure as hell won't know to
mm,
call her. So I start typing it, and she's blah blah blah, and so and so's on the phone, and oh yeah, what's her name's friend? And she gets on the phone. He says, "You remember who I am?" She goes, "Sure I do. Scotch neat, and you wear a mean lampshade." And I looked at the page and I said, "Oh my God, he's the hero."
uh,
In my mind, he was just a means to move the story forward for a few moments. He turned into the hero. And in another scene in that book, I'm typing along and she's talking to her assistant and she's rushing to catch a plane and she's saying this, that. And the assistant says, "Oh, Harrison's not going to like that." And she went, "Oh, damn, I forgot about him." And I thought, oh my God, she has a boyfriend. He's a fiance and he's a lawyer. Oh, wow. And I just kept going. The books, they tell me what's going on. I haven't a clue half the time. I seriously, I wrote a book, Aloha, Texas, which was my first segue between women's fiction and contemporary romance. So it's very much a contemporary romance, but it still has a lot of the complexities that my women's fiction used to have. And I've got this female heroine, and she's a long-haired brunette lawyer. There's nothing special about her. The point of this story is supposed to be Secret Baby. And the lawyer is standing there and she makes one comment to this guy about handsome, good looking, something or other, and dreams, never make that mistake again. I don't remember what she said, but I looked at it and I went, holy crap, she has a past.
Mm.
Oh my God, really? And I was just kept writing because I was like, these things pop up. They tell me. I don't think them up on my own. I don't dream them. They don't live in my head. I wish they would. I could write faster.
Do you find some books easier to write than others? Can you pick out one that was particularly a joy to write?
That shell game was a joy to write. It wrote itself. It went very, very fast. I wrote the first half on the cruise ship and the other half in my friend's backyard. Some stories, the characters are very, very vocal and tell me a lot of stuff right up front and just keep me plugging along very quickly. Um, Other books, not so much. I'm pulling teeth to get them out, and I'm not necessarily always thrilled with them when I'm done with them, but um, I wish I could think of how come some are easier to write than others.
So, what's your favorite part of the process, and what's your least favorite?
Finishing the book.
Okay. So, is starting your least favorite?
Maybe not. The very first opening scenes are pretty easy, but I think everything between the chapter 1 and the epilogue is probably my least favorite part.
Okay. Do you find that your writing or how you write or how you approach stories, has that changed since you first published?
I honestly don't
Mm.
think so,
Okay.
no. I honestly don't think so. I'm as much a pantser now as I was then. I open the keyboard, I start typing, and I pray for the best. I do have much more of a support system now than I did. In this book that I've written just recently, I called a couple of friends together for lunch, and I sent them a few chapters, and I said, this book is just drowning. Help. And we batted around quite a few ideas back and forth until enough of them clicked in my head that I was like, okay, I can make this happen. And one thing in particular that we came up was like, yes, my readers will love this. They will forgive me every other boring word in this book if I do this. Okay, we're done. And so I have more of that resource now than I may have had when I started out. But other than that, my process is really very, very similar. It has not changed much. I am slightly more disciplined to write faster and more now than I might have years ago before I was published, because you have all the time in the world when you're not published.
How have you made yourself faster?
Well, I've done two things. One is that I consider 9 to 5 a work day. So I open up my laptop and I pretend I'm at a job and I try to actually get words on a page, good, bad, or indifferent.
Mm.
Um, the other thing I've done, which doesn't always work out as well, I can take literally 10 hours to get 500 words on a page.
Mm.
Um, and if I'm on a roll, I can get 1,000 words in an hour. So, your muse is a funny thing.
True.
But the other thing that I've done that helped me a little bit with speed, because I'm a pantser, is I've learned to use dictation software.
Oh,
And it's not always perfect. I have to edit it, and I usually have to edit it right after a spurt, because otherwise I go back and I have no idea why um, whatever it thought I said, what it was supposed to mean. Because it can be really off. I don't have any off the top of my head, but some of them can be really, really, totally off the wall weird. Um, but what happens is, because I'm a pantser and I type well. I'm a 10-finger typist. I was smart enough in high school to know chemistry would be useless in my life, but typing could be helpful. Um, and so I do type with 10 fingers and I type fairly quick, but regardless, I do talk faster than I type. And so when I get an idea and I'm talking it into the computer, the entire concept and where I'm going is likely to be on the page before the phone interrupts me, the doorbell interrupts me, the dog starts barking, um, something happens. And then I come back to the page and I don't know where I was going and I forgot what I was doing. So it helps tremendously by getting entire thoughts and ideas on the page before I'm interrupted. Or I've only got 5 minutes left to go and I've got to run out the door. Oh, but I had this slight idea. And authors are notorious for, we get this idea. Oh, I'll write it down or I'll remember it later. And you don't know what it was. And the 5 words you wrote don't mean anything. And so you have no idea, well, what the hell is that supposed to mean? And so by literally just spitting it out, what flows for 5 minutes on the page, I've got the entire beginnings of a scene or something that I would not have done without the software. So it's been helpful in that sense.
I tend to write and rewrite and move things around as I'm going, and I write out of sequence. So every time I look at one of my pages and I'll be writing a scene, and then I realize these other things are going to happen later or maybe earlier, but they connected to this scene, and so I'll just do a bracket and earlier and start and write bits of that scene, and then do another bracket, do later and write bits of that scene, and then come back to the initiating scene that gave me the idea. I'm not sure I could do that
Yeah.
in in dictation. I
Well, you would wind up with different pages probably, or it's just how fast you do. It's just a matter of getting it down faster. I honestly don't know, because I'm I don't know anything about the story until I get there. There's rarely a time when I have a scene ahead that I need to write first. Once in a blue moon, there has been, and I'll write it, and I'll stick it in. I'll just stick it at the bottom of the draft and leave like a page between them
mm-hmm.
and keep filling in. I never rewrite anything until the end, ever, ever. I start, and good, bad. Like I said, this book is horribly boring, but I just kept chugging along, chugging along, chugging along. And now that I'm near the end and all these ideas are working and gelling, and I'm actually over my word count, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and now I'll cut out some stuff that I really don't need. That didn't pan out. We'll pull this out, but I won't redo it in the beginning because I have no idea where I'm going to wind up. So I might switch something that turns out to be useful,
Yes,
or what
yeah,
have you.
yeah. I don't throw.
So I don't rewrite a blessed thing. I just start from the beginning and keep moving. Um, and then when it's completely finished, if I have time, which I don't always have, I will go back to the beginning and I will read it through all the way, and I'll pull out a scene here. Or it's never a scene, it's usually just a line here, a line there. I'll add some emotion here. I'll tweak it, and then it goes off to my editor. A lot of times I'm so far behind the deadline curve that I don't even have time to do that. I just send it to my editor and let her tell me what's screwed up and what needs to be fixed.
Do you celebrate any steps in the process? Do you celebrate when you start, or when you finish, or when it's published, or?
Not usually. I've celebrated some milestones. Like I celebrated before I was published, when I finaled in the Golden Heart. That was a nice big celebration, and you know, when I hit USA Today on my own, that was a big celebration. Um, I don't, you know, finishing a book, I might, like, hey, shall we, who's free for dinner? My brain can take a break I might do something like that. I've got 24 hours worth of break time coming before I start the next book, but not anything real. No,
Okay.
not a whole lot.
Okay, I have a question from a reader that I love this question. And she asks, do you miss the characters and think about them once you've finished a book? And one of the reasons I love it so much is it says to me that she does.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Um, I don't know that I actually miss them. I don't know that I have time to miss them, but I probably have some of my favorites.
Mm,
Um, and oftentimes the favorites are not so much the person themselves, but scenes and things that happened to them in different books. Um, that I'll remember fondly, or I'm likely to remember when I've forgotten everything else about all the others. Um, like you always have the reader who asks, "Well, when is so and so going to get their story?" And I'm thinking, "Who's so and so?"
yeah.
And then not only is who's so and so, and I'm like, "I had somebody with that name in a book. What? Where? What?" You're totally boggled about it. So that actually does happen. You forget about people and scenes and things that they're completely wiped from your memory banks. And then you have the few characters who scenes and moments they're there. I'll
Mm,
give you an example of one that's such a secondary character. She was an assistant in Champagne Sisterhood, and she had very few scenes in the book, but she had one where she broke into someone's house and was bribing a couple of Doberman pinchers with chopped liver, and I just love that scene, and I loved her character, and I loved everything that happened in that character and that moment and that scene, and I remember almost everything in it. I could probably repeat it to you now if I had to, and that book was written, uh, 8 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, some just
And yet
just really connect. Uh,
yeah, and it's usually more related to a scene than it is a character.
so if you were not writing, what would you be doing?
I would still be selling real estate, and I would be working with flippers.
Uh,
It's kind of the business world equivalent of happy ever after.
do you write about real estate a lot?
Now it's relatively boring.
Huh. Okay, we have readers who ask. I want to make sure we get the reader questions in, and I always connect these two, and that may not be fair, but they connect in my head about how much it bothers you to find editing errors after the book is out. And the related question is if the cover image doesn't match the character description, and that reader says it's a pet peeve of hers, how does it feel
I
for the
can't blame her.
author?
Well, I'm fortunate because my career only started publishing professionally 5 years ago, maybe by now. And so this is a day and age when authors in general have a lot more control over their covers. So I've only had one book published that I didn't like the cover. Most of them have gone out with my approval, hair color, eye color. Well, I don't see eye color, but size, shape, form, whatnot. So I don't have that happen too much, but I've been around a lot of authors who had really bad covers, and the book is a blonde, and they've had the brunette on the cover, and the guy's name is Jack, and they keep calling him Jake on the back of the cover. Oh Lord, I was like, can't your agent do anything about that? And they're like, we
Yeah.
tried. So I can understand why it's a pet peeve of her. It would drive me nuts. It would drive me absolutely insane. But I fortunately have more control of my covers, so it's not usually a problem.
Okay, another reader asks, "What's your favorite place to write and why?" And then asks if it has an inspirational view.
Oh, well, my favorite place and my ideal place are not necessarily the same thing. Stick me anywhere with a water view, and I'm happy as a pig in mud. Uh, I adore writing near water. I have pictures of me writing on beaches in all sorts of places. Um, my friends in New York have a small boat, and they go out and anchor and swim, and I stay on the boat and write. It's just, I love anything with water. My favorite place that I can access, not necessarily at will, but um, that much more easily than flying to Hawaii. I'm from New York originally, and I have dear friends who I've known since college. She was my maid of honor, and you know we were in each other's bridal parties. And I go to their house in suburban New York, and I love being in their backyard. I pull out
Hmm.
the lounge chairs, the green trees, the green breeze, the green tree breeze, the green trees, the green grass, and the cooler, breeze. Because no matter where you are in New York, somewhere there's a breeze coming off of water someplace. And that's my favorite realistic place to write. When I'm home, I'm either on the sofa or in my bed. I like where I can be somewhat reclined and don't have to hold my own head up. It's true.
Okay.
When my
Okay.
laptop broke and I had to use the desktop a few years ago and I had to sit at a desk in a chair, I got tired of holding my own head up. I was like, this is the pits. I was like, this is the absolute pits. I couldn't even find a chair that was the back was high enough to rest my head. I was like, no, 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 no.
Okay, another reader question. If you could write a book with any other author, alive or dead, who would you want to work with and why?
Linda Steinberg. We actually did write a book together.
Oh, okay.
She came to me, and she's been a friend for years, and she's an excellent writer. Um, but she's retired and doesn't, write as she writes because she likes to write. And she came to me with an idea, and I was just too busy. And then we were on a road trip for personal reasons, and she started talking about that idea again. And I went, that could work. That might work. And the next day, her brother-in-law drove, and her husband were in the front seat, and she and I were in the back seat on our laptops writing. And for the next 2 weeks, we were in side-by-side recliners, beach chairs, kitchen chairs, you name it. And in a little over 2 weeks, we spit out a novella, and it was so much fun. And it was really quite good. And my editor said to her, she said, I've worked with Christine a long time, and I can usually spot who's who, and I cannot tell who wrote what part of this book.
Oh.
We were a perfect fit, and
Did,
I thoroughly enjoyed that.
did you learn something different from working with her?
I don't think so. She was
Or you
stuck
felt
with
like it
having to.
amplified your writing?
Yeah, she was just stuck with my process. And so she'd say, "Well, what if we do that?" I'd say, "I don't know. I haven't gotten that far." What if we, well, how about this? And I'd say, "I don't know. I haven't gotten that far." What do you think of this? I said, "Well, maybe." And but we worked, and we do have different. I'm somewhat conflict averse. Remember, MGM musicals, you've got everybody happy and happy and happy. So I don't like to make things too overly angsty, and I despise forced conflict. I can't stand it when the hero and heroine get angry over some stupid thing and storm off and behave like they're 7 years old. Um, so she and I occasionally had a slight difference on how to proceed. But we'd talk, and she'd throw out ideas, and I'd throw out ideas, and she'd throw out ideas, and I'd throw out ideas. And eventually we'd come to her, and she'd say, "I can live with that." And I'd say, "Yeah, I can live with that too." And we'd diverge in the middle, and it worked out quite well. That book was called Waikiki Wedding, and it was good. It was fun.
That's certainly a compliment that's the person that you would like to write another book with. That's wonderful.
I would.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have too crazy a system. I can't imagine writing with anybody else.
That's I have the same feeling when people talk about, well, wouldn't you like to collaborate? And I keep trying to think, I'm not sure anybody would want to collaborate with me. I'm not sure I would either, because I like the megalomania of having it be your own world. And yes, the characters butt in, and they do make things be a certain way, but still I get to rule the world.
Yes, isn't that fun? Pinky in the
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to rule the world.
So tell us some about your interactions with readers. Do you do events? Do you see them a lot? Do you get letters?
I don't do events much anymore. I used to do more, but as I increased my production schedule, that became very difficult. And I found readers, if they have to be given the choice between having more books to read and a chance to see me, they seem to like reading my books more. So I've had a couple of fun things happen. I think my favorite reader story happened when I was in California doing a book signing at a winery. And so there were an enormous amount of people who were there for wine tours or for lunch, who strolled into where we were and looked around at the books. That wasn't their prime reason for having gone there.
Did you get to taste the wine?
Oh yeah, we got to drink lots of the wine.
Okay.
We also got to eat. It was great. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that one again. It was in Sonoma. But one particular woman came by, and she stood in front of my table, and she said to me, she pointed down at my name, and she says, "This looks familiar." And I says, "Really, do you read romance?" She says, "Yes, I'm in KU, which is an Amazon program. And I only read books that are in KU." And I said to her, "Well, I'm not in that program. You can buy my books anywhere, so you probably haven't read me." She says she's got her phone, and she's scrolling through her phone now. She goes, "No, the name it looks really familiar." And she's frowning, and all of a sudden her face lights up, and she turns around and she shows me her phone. She owned every single book I had written.
Oh my goodness.
And she just stumbled in there. She had no idea that we were there. She didn't connect right away who I was. And that was probably one of the biggest compliments I had ever gotten from a
That's
reader.
lovely.
It was just, I just was like so overwhelmed.
So tell the listeners, if they have not read any of your books, what is a good book to start with? Where is a good indication of what your work is like and an entry point?
Well, the most logical entry point at this point is my current series, which is the Farraday Country, which is about a West Texas family of ranchers, even though they all have different jobs. And it's six brothers, one sister. It started out as 7 brides for 7 brothers, but you know that pantser thing. I wound up with a baby sister instead of a baby brother. And that one, the very first book in it, Adam, is free on an e-reader. So that's an excellent way to get into what my current style is. My former, slightly more complex is my Aloha series, and the sweeter version of those also has the first free. And if you're more of a Nora Roberts meteor type, meteor as in MEATIER, not as in astrological. If you're more into a meaty type of book, then I would recommend Champagne Sisterhood. I don't know anybody who's ever picked that one up who didn't like it.
Oh, that's quite a compliment. Would any of your books you feel might be what I would consider an overlooked gem that even your regular and loyal readers might not be as familiar with?
It's probably Champagne Sisterhood because it's not advertised much. It doesn't have a romantic cover. It's got a vineyard on the cover. So people don't automatically. Usually, what will happen is people will find me at some point in a series, and they will read through the series, and they'll go through all the series, and that's the one they're less likely to go back and buy because it's a longer book. It's a different cover. It doesn't look like a romance because it's a romantic women's fiction. It's not if you took the romance out of that book, you still have a book.
Mm-hmm.
And in my other romances, if you take the romance out, you're kind of like, why am I reading this?
Well, now we're going to go into my very favorite part, the rapid fire, either ors. You ready?
Shoot.
Binge watch or make the watching last as long as possible?
I don't know. I think maybe binge watch.
So much for the rapid fire, Chris.
I don't, that's a hard one because I don't watch a lot, so I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll keep going here. We'll say hot air balloon or train trip.
Oh, train trip. There's no way you're getting me up in the air with nothing strong under my feet.
Daisies or roses?
Roses.
Cat or dog?
Oh, that's a toughie. I've had both. At the moment, we have dogs. We'll go with dogs.
Coffee or tea?
Oh, tea.
Opera or show tunes?
Show tunes.
Day or night?
Night.
Paper plates or best china?
Oh, that's something I have to think for. In real life, I have to use paper plates because I don't like doing dishes. But had I been born rich and the queen, I would definitely be doing china.
All right. Pickup or sports car?
Pickup.
Heels or slippers?
Heels.
Hiking boots or cowboy boots?
Oh, dear. Do I have to pick one?
Yep.
Cowboys.
Appetizer or dessert?
Appetizer.
I'll still give you dessert, but I'll say ice cream or cake.
Cake.
House decorating or gardening?
Oh, good Lord, house decorating. I have brown thumbs.
Paint or wallpaper?
Paint.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Summer.
Sailboat or motorboat?
I think sailboat.
Mustard or ketchup?
Ketchup.
Spring or fall?
Oh, that's a 50-50 toss-up. I'll take either. Spring.
Leggings or sweats?
Neither. Bite your tongue.
Nail polish or bare nails?
Oh, nail polish.
Cruise or trekking vacation?
Well, since I don't know what the second one is and I love cruises, we'll go with cruise.
Okay. And the last one, grab the best first or save the best for last?
Save the best for last.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been a lot of fun.
Same here.
I hope all the listeners will come back next week to meet another author and find out the stories behind the stories on Authors Love Readers podcast. And have a great week of reading. That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.